never made it, but I know what it takes. I'm motivated by a mix of emotion. Got my statement, and I'm reading it slow so I can understand it fully. Appreciate my standing, go out of this world and right on time. Oh, never in my life have I seen the sky light up like this. I'm far away from Earth and I wanna know if you exist. Mission control, do you read me? Send me my coordinates lately. Mission control, am I drifting? Tie me to someone who will love me, yeah. Wait, I think I'll last a bit longer, fine.
Welcome everyone, welcome everyone, welcome everyone to another Ref Brandon and the Todd family YouTube video. Wherever you are, whatever you may be doing, thank you so much for making Ref Brandon and the Todd family part of your day. We always greatly appreciate it. I hope everybody had a wonderful weekend. You see, I'm all decked out in my orange colored Clemson stuff today because this week is the ACC tournament in college baseball, and then of course we'll have the NCAA tournament. So I'm hoping that Clemson is getting ready for another college World Series appearance. They have not been to one in quite a while, but today here on the channel I want to preview another 2024 college football team's schedule. But first, I want to give a quick Braves review because I did not do one last week. Right now, the Braves are 10 games above 500 at 26-16. Last night's game was ugly. Don't even want to talk about that game. Most people can't watch the Braves games now because of the channel they come on, because almost nobody has that channel. But I believe last night was the 4th or 5th time this year the Braves have played either on the ESPN Sunday night game of the week or the Fox Saturday game of the week, and I think they've lost every one of those games. So far this year, when the Braves have had a chance to impress all of America, they have failed and failed miserably. Last night's game was over. 4 batters into the game. It was hideous. But they're 5 games behind the Phillies because the Phillies are 20 games above 500 at 34-14. Now the Phillies are on pace to win like 116 games. They're not going to win 116 games. But if the Braves aren't careful, they're going to find themselves so many games behind the Phillies that they're not going to catch them. I know baseball is long, but the Phillies are so good with hitting and pitching that they're not going to have a stretch where they are going to lose 9 or 10 games in a row. They're not going to have a stretch where they're going to lose 12 of 20. They're just too good. So if the Braves end up being 9 or 10 games behind them, it's going to be really hard to catch them. Austin Riley's been out for a week now. Why they don't put him on the injured list, I don't know, because that just hurts the Braves, because you can't call anybody up when you still have Austin Riley, a current active member of the roster, even though he can't play. I don't understand that at all. They've been without Sean Murphy since game number 1, and now they're without Travis d'Arnaud, probably only a couple games for d'Arnaud. But them being hurt doesn't matter. What matters is that Ronald Acuna Jr. is still not hitting. Orlando Arcia is not near as good as he was last year. Jared Kelenic is an average hitter at best. When Kelenic doesn't play, Adam Duvall is barely hitting 200. Chadwick Tromp is not hitting. If Marcell Ozuna gets cold, the Braves are in trouble because he's really carrying them offensively right now. Now, Matt Olson is slowly starting to pick it up. He was hitting 195 about a week ago. Now he's around 220. But Matt Olson's never going to be a high average kind of guy. He's just going to hit home runs and have RBIs. But so far this year, he's not really doing much of that. For some reason this year, offensively, the Braves have a team filled with underachievers. And I don't know why, but none of them are hitting right now except for Marcell Ozuna. So the Braves better hope he stays hot, because he's the only hope they have right now on offense, because they're just not hitting at all. But today, my main topic is the college football team's schedule. And today, it's going to be the Oklahoma Sooners. Now, of course, this will be Brent Venables' third year as the head coach. Now, they're going to have a brand new quarterback as far as him being the starter. He was on the team last year. He was on the roster, but he was the backup. But, of course, Dylan Gabriel transferred. Before I talk about Oklahoma's schedule, I want to ask, why is it that everything Dabo Swinney does gets criticized? And I talked about this with one of my co-workers at work last week. He tried to say that Dabo said this, and I said, well, I haven't heard that, but I guarantee you that's not what he said. And sure enough, he played the clip, and it's not what he said. But the media tries to overblow everything he does and says. And I told that coworker of mine, I said, Dabo Swinney is the only man in America that if he was to get diarrhea, it'd be national headlines. And I don't understand it. I think the reason why is because nobody wants to admit that people can win and win fairly, and you ain't got to cheat to win. And as long as Dabo's been at Clemson, you've never heard any kind of rumor of anything that he done illegal. He's never said anything bad about any of his players. He doesn't bash his players. He says nothing bad about them. He's never been caught any kind of controversy off the field at all. He even got pulled over by a cop, I guess 2015 or 16, because he was speeding. And instead of Dabo being like a lot of coaches saying, do you know who I am? Dabo just said, you know what? I was wrong. I was speeding. And I think because of the fact people can't find anything wrong that he does or says, that they try to take everything he does and says and make a big deal out of it. But supposedly last week, the article was that Dabo said none of the players in the portal are good enough to play for Clemson. And that's not what he said. What he said was most of the players that are in the portal are not good enough to play for Clemson, which is 100% accurate. If people would stop trying to bash him, stop trying to criticize him, and just think about that statement, there are 3,000 plus players in the transfer portal. Now, I don't know the exact number, but I'd say at least 1,000 of them don't have scholarships. If they don't have scholarships, they're not good enough to play for Clemson. If you ain't good enough to play for a small collegiate program, and you're not good enough to even get a scholarship, you're not good enough to play for Clemson. That is an accurate statement. And out of all the ones that do have a scholarship, maybe 1,000 of them are good enough to play for Clemson. Maybe 1,000 of them. But if you've got 3,000 kids in the portal and 2,000 aren't good enough to play for Clemson, then 2,000 is greater than 1,000, which means most of the players in the portal aren't good enough to play for Clemson. That is a 100% correct statement. He didn't say anything bad about any of the players or nothing. He just said a factual statement. But since it's Dabo that said it, it was a big deal. And I don't know why. It was a 100% accurate statement. Dabo's the only coach in America that can say stuff without bashing anybody, without saying anything bad about anybody, but yet he's still wrong. And I don't understand it. There is nothing wrong with that statement. It's a factual statement. And all it is people just cannot get over the fact that all these teams now live and die by the transfer portal, and Dabo will not use it. And they're trying to figure out why he won't use it. He ain't got to tell you why he won't use it. He just doesn't want to. That's his prerogative. That's his decision. That doesn't mean that everything he says is wrong because he won't use the portal. But on to Oklahoma's schedule. They open up the season on a Friday night, August 30th, against Temple. Then they play Houston on September the 7th and Tulane on September the 14th. I don't think they'll have any kind of trouble in any of those three games. Then they kick off SEC play on September 21st against Tennessee. Then they play Auburn on September 28th. They have their first bye week, the first week in October. Then they're back in action the second Saturday in October on the 12th against Texas. Then they play South Carolina on the 19th and Ole Miss on October 26th. Then they open up the month of November on November the 2nd with their final non-conference game against Maine. And then they play Missouri on November the 9th. And then they have their second bye week, the third Saturday in November. And they wrap up the regular season, the final two games, Alabama on the 23rd and LSU on November the 30th. Now, there are four non-conference games: Temple, Houston, Tulane, and Maine. They should win all those games by probably an average margin of victory of 30 points. None of them should be close. So they should go 4-0 out of conference pretty easily. But in the SEC, I think they beat Auburn, they beat South Carolina, they beat Ole Miss, and they beat Missouri. That gives them 4 wins inside the SEC. I think they lose to Texas, and I think they lose to Alabama. And then I'll give them a half a win against Tennessee, and I'll give them a half a win against LSU. So I say they win 1, lose 1. So I've got them going 5-3 in the SEC, 9-3 overall, which is not a bad season, especially when you're going into it and it's your first year in a new conference and you've got a brand new quarterback since Dylan Gabriel transferred. But I just think if they go anything better than 9-3, it's a really successful season. But I think between LSU and Tennessee, they'll win one of those, but I think they'll also lose one. And I think Texas is better than they are, and I think Alabama is better than they are. So I expect 2 losses there, and I think they'll split with Tennessee and LSU. As the year goes on, I might change my mind, but right now, so far at LSU, Brian Kelly has shown no semblance of playing defense at all. And if Oklahoma's offense is anywhere near as good as it was last year, they're going to score. So even if they beat LSU 65-60, they've got a chance in that game. So I've got them 5-3 in the SEC, 9-3 overall. Any thoughts on any of this? Please feel free to let me know. Let's go ahead and get our dad joke of the day in here. I tried working in a muffler factory. The work was exhausting. And that does it for today's Ref Brandon and the Todd family YouTube video. Until next time, it's Ref Brandon saying, just like in pro wrestling, life can be over, by the count of 3. Tell your friends and family how much you love them. Bye.